Always when we were growing up, we heard a lot of neat things, about the Wallers. And the Wallers had a saying, Wallers is peculiar people. And I always thought that was a bizarre saying, that Wallers is peculiar people. My mother was not Corbels. She married into the Wallers. Now the Corbels, I guess you'd say of them, they wasn't peculiar people, and the Wallers was peculiar people. The Corbels is good church-going folk, and the Wallers, well, they was peculiar people. My old granddaddy Waller was a good old man. He worked hard all his life, rode the trains in the Depression as a hobo trying to find a job for his family. Had a hard time out there. My mama, being a Corbel, didn't quite like my Grandpa Waller, Granddaddy Waller, because he was a peculiar people. The Wallers wasn't that religious. Back years ago, down one of the local churches down the Sandhills, went to build its church, and they run out of money. And lo and behold, there wasn't nobody in the country had any money but the bootleggers. And my great-grandpa, he made a little shine here and there, and preacher come see him, and he give that preacher enough money to finish the church. Well, some of them good church-going people didn't like that too much, but that preacher answered it this way. He said, that money's been working for the devil long enough. Time let it work for the Lord for a little while. The family always did like that old preacher. He married a bunch of them, buried a bunch of them. Kind of had an understanding with my great-grandpa that both of them had a purpose in the community. Each served a constituency in a unique way. The church preached on a lot of stuff, but kind of stayed away from shine, and every now and then a dollar or two fell in the offering plate. Well, old Granddaddy Waller, he made a little shine. He enjoyed that lifestyle, had a country sense of humor, operated like the Wallers did on the rules of theft. Theft, if you steal from the government, it's all right. If you steal from your neighbor, that might not be too good. If you steal from your kin, you really are a lowlife. And Granddaddy was an honest man, at least in the latter two of these. Now, my mama didn't care much for the old man, and one day he was out there under the trees, and him and my uncles, and of course being a young feller about 5, there wasn't nobody in the world any better than my Granddaddy Waller. Just loved the man. I adored him. Went out there and sat with him, and he was drinking some what looked like clear water out of an old fruit jar. They was laughing and carrying on. The minute he reached down in his pocket and he pulled out a plug of Red Man chewing tobacco. Cut him a plug off. Handed one to my uncle. I stand there and I said, Granddaddy, I want one. He said, son, you don't need this. I said, oh, yeah, please, Granddaddy, let me have one. He said, well, sure. He cut me off a plug of that Red Man. I popped it in my mouth, bit down on it, and swallowed it. You talk about sick. I sick. Oh, I sick. I went in the house. I was sick and squalling and carrying on. They're about in the backyard laughing. My mama didn't care much, them Wallers. They's peculiar people. She went out there, jumped on that old man and said, what'd you do? He said, well, the boy wanted to plug a Red Man, and I give him one. Oh, she hit the ceiling. He said, Montez. He said, don't worry about it much. It'll just worm him good. Well, guys, you know the Lord moves in mysterious ways. Of course, my mama still gets mad about this to this day, and that old man's been dead a long time. But you know, I'm moving up in the mid-50s, been almost 50 years ago, and to my knowledge, I ain't ever been wormy. On top of that, I ain't ever wanted to chew a Red Man neither. I don't chew, and I don't go with girls that do. And on account of that tobacco, and not being able to go with girls that chewed tobacco, I ended up having to marry outside the family. Wallers is peculiar people.